Okay, so now we're going to look at some notes and illustrations, as it says. And this is, I think, material that was originally put together for the Poet Laureate reading in Milwaukee for the original, for your inauguration or original reading or whatever it was called. And I think we were saying, talking earlier, just we're going to keep this flexible, so there's like things to look at and talk about, and there's also room for questions, and at any point or at the end of what you want to go through the slides, we'll sort of see. But so take us through what you have to, what you'd like us to look at, and then maybe it was a chance to talk a little bit about see drawings as a way to think about process in writing somehow.
I guess. So these are my slides that I made for my inaugural reading for Poet Laureate. And I was asked to give a presentation, or I think I was asked to talk for half an hour on my work. And I don't generally talk about my work. I didn't go to school for writing. I mean, I've been writing a lot for a long time since my early 20s, but I never had a chance to go to school. So I think I consider writing in ways differently than most people, and so it helps me to share my images as far as like what I'm doing with my writing. And this is called Isthmus because I'm from Panama. I moved to this country when I was 7 years old. I was actually born in Oregon. Then after a few months, both my parents were Panamanian. We moved back to Panama, and then we moved to Dublin when I was 7 years old. Spanish was my first language, and so I do write a lot about Panama. I mean, all my books are sort of named after that in a way, except, well, Austin counter demons are not really that, but bicycle, part of the reasoning behind bicycle, why I use that word, not only because I did have a routine of riding my bike 20 miles a day, meditating an hour a day, and writing an hour a day for 4 years, every day, 6 days, and every week, 6 days a week, every week, all year long. I missed maybe three days a year of that routine, and I wrote a couple books in the process. And that's extreme, and I'll explain maybe a little bit later why I did that. But so the idea of bicycle is it's symbolic to me. It joins the hemispheres, like Panama joins the hemispheres. So the Isthmus joins the hemispheres. So just to make a long story short, I'm bipolar. I've had a lot of manic phases. I've been psychotic. I've had 12 major psychotic breaks in my life, and I've been in mental hospitals and halfway houses altogether 3 years of my life. And I never had family to rely on through these things, and I had to work myself out of a very hard position, basically through my writing, through meditating, and through biking for 4 years to get to a balanced place. And so a lot of what I do in being from Panama is I try to draw a parallel. Panama. I don't like the term bipolar. It doesn't describe me completely, but I am Panamanian, and Panama, as I see it, also relates to the bicycle because it's bringing the hemispheres together. It joins the oceans to the sea. It's shaped like a snake, so I have a book called Culebra. And I see the snake as being a supremely yogic animal, so I'm interested in writing as a yoga, and yoga in the ancient sense of putting together. I'm just basically just putting things together, associating things together. I spent a lot of time in my life disassociating, and so a lot of my writing practice has been associating. And so Isthmus is a natural associator. It associates the hemispheres, it associates the oceans, and so on. My next book is called Yaviza, which is a town at the end of the Pan American Highway. The Pan American Highway starts in Alaska, goes all the way down through Canada, Oregon, Washington, California, Mexico, and ends in Yaviza because the jungle is so dense that it can't proceed. And so it continues on the other side of the Colombian jungle. But Yaviza is the endpoint of empire in terms of what my writing is. But all to say that I'm doing all these things in terms of being from Panama, being Panamanian. That's largely where the bicycle image comes from. And I also like the fact that the bicycle is a very common image, and I'm interested in symbols, and I wanted to get a lot of energy and meaning behind the object of the bicycle, and such that it would kind of enhance my meditative experience of riding my bike, which I still do as much as I can. And so these are some framing notes. So these are, I'm just using quotes from stuff that I've sort of discovered in my writing. So this just kind of frames a lot of the things that I do. So I'm talking from the other side of the word, and that might make sense if you consider my stuff. New kind of yoga is needed to allow the advanced cyborg to succeed in being human. My background is in math and computer science. I have a bachelor's in math and bachelor's in computer science. I went to grad school for math, and it wasn't a good fit. I became a writer almost immediately after dropping out of graduate school. And I've been interested in computers from the beginning. You know, at first it was this big thing. It was, you know, the end of totalitarianism, you know, the beginning of unbounded freedom, and now here we are. And so that comes up a lot in my work, you know, the difference between human and machine and things like that. So silence, learning from silence, the ringing in our ears as a decentralized nervous system, the inner sound of all of us that John Cage heard in the silence chamber, the high-pitched sound is loud everywhere now. There's a link between us and the seas on the top, the sound of the cicada, which brings on a cyborg. So these are notes that I lifted out of I have a poetic statement in this book, Bridge of the World. It's called Snake Vision. And one of my first psychotic phase, I saw myself turn into a snake in the mirror. And it was much more than that. It was profoundly, you know, disturbing, and you know, it went on to all kinds. You know, my psychotic phases are the most beautiful and most terrifying experiences of my life. They're sort of a direct hit of the sacred, but they're also very disturbing. And there's a lot to them. I spent my life trying to, you know, get some balance. So largely, my writing practice is that, my drawing practice is that. Often I find that, so, you know, this paragraph here is where I kind of describe, you know, how I see my writing, and especially my writing, also my drawing, as a healing practice. So often I find that I'm settled with a poem when, while reading it aloud, I feel that I air out a profound wound located throughout my body, but especially in the area around my heart and my throat. This is a very raw and visceral experience that defies easy explanation. In this sense, vulnerability is not conceptual, and I aim at a cosmic vulnerability. And I talked about vulnerability in that Poetry in Time and War piece that I just read. It's as if I need to go beyond the capacity I have to conceptualize in order to get to any truly healing energy in my work. I cannot heal myself without going beyond myself, and from there allowing myself to be rearranged from what I am at the present moment, letting the light in, which is also beyond me. I need to continue to find new ways of airing the wound because my windows to it always close in time, and so I do not believe in stylizing, conceptualizing uncertainty. This fact has no clear implication as to the needed form to give a poem, and poems sometimes take on this quality for me after some time, but the quality can be otherwise time-dependent, and nearly impossible aims to get past this time dependency. So this is like, I'm trying to get at the fact that I write all these different ways. I'm not, you know, some people try to write poems that somehow respond to theory or whatever. You know, I'm interested, I read whatever I can, as much as I can, as profoundly as I can, but largely this is what I'm doing. I'm not trying to really play off of anybody else's ideas. So this is the drawings, this is my drawings, and this is called I Was Sown. So I do these on index cards, so I'm interested in especially red and black. Those are my colors. I'm red, black, and white. I'm Indian black and white, and I try to get beyond race with those colors in some ways if I can, address those things. This is called The Moon Went Inside drawing. So to me, my drawings can speak a little bit better than I can. This is called Horse. I've always been obsessed with horses. They come up a lot in my work. Snakes, I used to catch snakes a lot when I was a kid. I'm an animal person, I'm a woods person, a person interested in the jungle, I'm a person interested in insects. I listen to a lot of music. The book so far, Os is the first place of dying. So Os is also what do you call the opening of the female uterus. It means mouth, it means bone. Counter demons is a way of seeing, bicycle is a way of being, Kuleva is a way of knowing. So these are notes from my poetic statement, Snake Vision. And so also in other words, bicycle is my yoga machine, book of poems, as I sort of got before. So I already kind of said all this stuff. Symbol of the bicycle joins the hemispheres, so this is a Panama. And it also joins the oceans to the sea. It is just an anti-prolific symbol of resistance against extermination of harmonies and fruitful dissonances. And Panama is shaped like a snake, a supremely yogic animal, hence culebra. Panama is the bridge of the world. That's another, bridge of the world. That's Panama. And actually, I was googling, and somebody wrote this poem called Bridge of the World. He's Latino in Oregon, wrote a poem called Bridge of the World about Panama. It's like just a short lyric poem. So it's kind of, I think that speaks to the fact that I don't really elaborate that much in my writing. Mostly, I don't complexify. I like what Lezama Lima says about writing. Lezama Lima is a very complex writer, and people ask him about it. Why are you so complex? He says that he's saying things, he's talking or he's describing things or manifesting things that are said as simply as possible. They're complex, but he says it as simply as possible. So I'm not trying to I'm not trying to make anything more complex. I'm just trying to get at it as directly as I can. And that's partly why I wanted to show the contrast between that very first poem and the second poem. The first poem was very internal. It's probably my most complex poem in a way. And then the second poem, this also has horses in it, was a Read the World poem. And that poem, I used to do a lot of meditation retreats. I was a serious Buddhist for a long time, for about 10 years. I've done maybe 10 long-term retreats, twice for 3.5 weeks, like eight times for 9 days, and you don't speak through these retreats. You meditate from 5 in the morning to 9 at night, and they're really profound experiences. And so that's what Horses of Insight was. I was at a meditation center after a few days of meditating, and I had this amazing experience with these horses that all I had to do was just write it down. And it was just all there in front of me. And so I also talk about Panama as being the bridge of the world, and it's a homeland of the liminal. I spent a lot of time being liminal. Yaviza is the endpoint of empire, the last stop on the Pan American highway before the jungle and tropical lung. The book of writing and drawing I'm currently inside of. I'm currently writing a book called Tropical Lung. I don't know how much time we have, to just keep going, or do you want to open it up? Or I can keep going like this, or do you want to?
Maybe we could, open it up and see if people have questions or discussion that we can follow up, because that's, I think, sets a great kind of way to begin understanding.
Yeah, there's a lot more slides. We can keep going, but does anybody want me to address anything in particular? Or?
Why is it tropical lung and not like tropical heart or kidney or esophagus?
Well, that's an actual thing. Tropical lung is an important tropical lung in the Darien jungle. And a tropical lung is like this. It's a part of the jungle. It's what they describe as. It's what the jungle does. It cleans out the air in this area because that's what jungles do. And so if the jungle is healthy, it's a tropical lung. It has a tropical lung. So apparently the Darien jungle in Panama has a healthy tropical lung. And in one of these slides later on, right here, Darien is where I started. My very first book was Darien. And that was a collection of poems I started a long time ago, like 30 years ago now. And that's the name of the jungle, Darien. It's like an Anglo name of the jungle. And now I'm at Tropical Lung, which I feel better about. There's no name, no ethnicity, law really. In fact, there's English words, but takes out the name a little bit. And also, Tropical Lung could be someplace else, could be Brazil. But yeah.
I was thinking about your drawings, and I love how they look on the screen, like so big and abstract and loose. But did you say that you make them on index cards?
Yeah, they're index cards. Yeah. I have them actually on my business cards. I have quite a few business cards. Some of my drawings, and I'll give you one if you want.
Yeah. So how did you get started on why is that the format?
It's just convenient. I have a Walgreens nearby, and I could always get like a couple stacks of index cards. And I used to bicycle. Actually, this was also on an index card, and the materials I used for this were just markers that I got from Walgreens. And so it's just convenient. I don't like to elaborate things that much, I like to try to make things elemental. I have that one poem called Elemental Song. And those are actually done, not this one, but the ones that you're seeing up there, they were done with fountain pens. I was doing stuff with fountain pens for a while. Anybody else want to say something? Yeah.
So sort of commenting on that, what you said about stating complex things simply, how do you sort of find the right words to do that? How do you sort of know that you've come to a place where you state what you wanted to say in the simplest way possible?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot behind it. I can't get at everything. I've been writing for a long time, and initially I had these jobs working at the first computer labs. So people were just starting to use WordPerfect and all those other programs, and I didn't have to do anything. I could just write all day long. And I remember I would just write as fast as I could and as intensely as I could for 8 hours. I mean, I just had electricity going up and down my spine. And at that time, there weren't that many people in computer labs. And people would be like looking at me like, what's he doing? And I was just free associating. So I've done a lot of free associating. And I used to like William Burroughs and like Jack Kerouac. And Jack Kerouac talks about like writing out of bebop and jazz. And I was listening to a lot of music, so a lot of it, so I do try to pay attention to sound. It's hard to describe it because each poem is different, and after years of practice, you get a sense of what you want to keep and what you don't. I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
What is your editing process like? Do you edit yourself, or do you just let the stream of consciousness be what it is?
I try to keep true with what starts. I mean, I try to get into an internal space, but I'm not always on the inside, I do edit, but basically what I do anymore is I usually work on one poem a week. So I'll start in the beginning of the week. I usually get up early in the morning. I'm at the computer at 5:30. And I write. I try to get into an internal space, and I write for an hour anymore. That's all the time I have. And then I edit throughout the week, and then I stop. So that's my process now. But for a long time at the beginning, I used to just write lots and lots, and I think something happened where I had to focus my energies to just this little bit of time. I think I'm a better writer now than I was at the beginning. Like at the beginning, I didn't want to edit anything because I didn't have what was I going to edit? What rules was I going to follow? I didn't have any rules I really wanted to follow. I just wanted to get the electricity down on paper. And so anymore, the rules that I follow are, does it feel right? Does it sit right with me? Do I want to go back to it? And then I accumulate the ones that I stick with, and then I weed stuff out. After I have a book together, I weed stuff out. So it's kind of like it. Should I keep going with this?
Sure. If you have more, I don't know if there's more
Okay.
images. You can feel free to skip around as you.
Yeah. So here I mentioned Saloma, Nation, Radical Faciality. So I'll show you a clip of this. It's a really fascinating practice from Panama. I listened to a lot of music, and about 15 years ago, I found a CD of street music of Panama in the library, and it had a song on it called Gritos, and Gritos in Spanish means screams. And it was fascinating. I thought, I've never heard anything like this before. It's from Panama. Or I didn't know. I mean, I thought maybe it was common throughout Latin America or whatever, but it turns out it's specific to Panama. And it took me years, but I went back to Panama and I talked to my cousin. I let him listen to this clip. I said, what is this? And he knew right away. It was Saloma Panameña. And so then I had a name for it. And then once I had a name for it, we put on the radio in Panama, and they play a lot of folk music, and a lot of the folk music has some version of Saloma going on in it. It's profound. It's pervasive throughout all kinds of folk music in Panama. And it's an ancient practice. It was there before the Europeans, and it's still going on. And it's something that I'm really really happy to have found. I'll show you a clip later. And then I have this, there I say tech, a cross between technologies. The Coons illustrated my piece called The Coons Republic. In my book, Your Visa, will be out sometime soon. Tecumseh Republic. Tecumseh was a Shawnee leader. He was known by Andrew Jackson, the famous Indian hater, as the only Indian capable of uniting an Indian nation. And I think he had a chance to do something, but he got killed. And so I named this piece Tecumseh Republic. I describe it as being sort of a ghost ontology. And it's all kinds of things. I'm trying to get past phrase, I'm trying to get past reading, I'm trying to get towards sensing, I'm trying to get at, like Octavio Paz has that book, An Erotic Beyond, so I'm trying to get to like not only the yogas that I've just talked about, but also the yoga of pleasure and pain that Octavio Paz talks about with Sade, and so all kinds of stuff. And so like I like the fact that, if I am a citizen of the Tecumseh Republic, I can call myself a tech. So that's a form of tech that I can live with being. I don't care about computers really, but I have to deal with them as much as I can. So then, I've made a living with computers most of my life. I was a programmer for 9 years, database programming, fourth dimension programming, PeopleSoft programming, Oracle programming. And so there are all these words that computers use that I try to steal back. So like host, like every single Windows machine has a host file. And I think it's interesting. It doesn't really usually have anything in it. It has like one little dummy thing in it. You can do certain things with it, but it's mostly empty. And it's potentially a sacred term that I'm trying to steal back something potentially sacred from the computer. Symbol table, that's like the only thing I remember from my compiler theory class in college, that there's a symbol table. And I have a poem called Symbol Table in Culebra. It's part of a compiler. So a compiler is like a program that writes a program that lets you write a program. So if I write a Pascal compiler that makes Pascal so that you can use Pascal to write a program. So a compiler has generally a symbol table, and it's basically like a glossary. So I'm trying to steal these terms back. It's a little bit anticipating like what the future might be like, and in the future people are going to know these terms maybe, and maybe they'll be mapped to their internal lives, like somehow they've sort of made it to my internal life. I don't know. But begin and end are used all over the place in computers, void, self, this. These are words that are like really resonant with meaning for me, and I want to take them back in my poems. And dual table, like every database has a dual table, and dual table is like this totally meaningless table. It doesn't do anything. It has like one element and it never has a value in it. And every single SQL database has this table. And there's an arcane reason for it existing, and I've read about it, but it's mostly used to join other tables. And so I think that's really fascinating, like this totally useless thing in the middle of all this, bullshit of having to be functional and practical and useful. So I'm trying to make something out of, the desert that I a lot of times find myself in, because everybody else is, studying in all these great places poetry, and I'm stuck writing a fucking program. So, so this is Saloma Panameña. Okay, I don't know how to.
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's too bad. That's a really great practice. So I'll go through these, and then maybe after we finish, I can show you some.
At the least you can send it to me, and I can send it on to people.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another of my drawings, chemical communication. So like one of the ones I wanted to share about Saloma Panameña is this radical faciality. So there's these two people. They're like barking at each other and yelping at each other and making all these profound, complicated sounds at each other. It's not words, and it's just like this. It's like this improvisation. It's as intense as any experimental music you've ever heard, and it's ancient and it's from Panama. And so like part of what I'm concerned with is that people are internalizing the screen. People are spending less and less time in face-to-face interaction, and there's a lot that goes on between people face-to-face. And so this drawing tries to get at chemical communication. We chemically communicate face-to-face, and we're losing that. And there's lots of stuff that we're losing in relying on the computer, and it's changing how we relate to other people, how we see the world, And I'm trying to address that. So hopefully I can show you that clip at the end. But, you know, I try to do a lot with Saloma later on. So that's chemical communication. This is another thing, so no glass between us, you know. I'm trying to get at, you know, because I feel it. I feel this tension, you know, that comes from having communicated with all these people through the computer. That gets, you know, it adds some kind of energy or takes away some kind of energy sometimes. And I'm, you know, so I'm concerned with that in these drawings. This is another one, face-to-face rhythm. So, you know, this is kind of all reaching back to Saloma. This is called Ocean See Ocean. I really like this drawing somehow. It kind of, you know, my drawings sometimes they just come out of nowhere. I don't get a chance to draw that much, but somehow my vocabulary changes anyway. And so next slide is I did like lots of notebooks of a certain kind of journaling. So I'll show you the next slide. That's my journal, and it's really totally illegible. And allow, together, allow, like all these, I just do all these words over and over again. I did lots of notebooks of this stuff. And I went through a long crisis period where I had to, the main thing was that I had to get the pen on the paper. And so every morning on the bus ride to work, I had to write these journals. So I have all these journals of all these words tied together, and the main thing was just to get the pen on the paper. And the rhythms, I wanted to get these rhythms together. And there's certain words that come up over and over again, compassion and things like that. And so I have all these notebooks, like hundreds of pages like this, and then I boiled it all down to that drawing. You know, so I have that drawing named that in my book coming up called Divisa. And so this is from Panama. These are called molas, and these are made by the Kuna Indians of Panama. And they're a small tribe, but they're known as one of the strongest indigenous cultures in the world. They're like 50,000 people. And part of the strength of the culture is that the women make these molas. And this it started off, I guess hundreds of years ago, it used to be a form of body art. And then fabrics came into play. And so this is like, so now the women they usually make molas in pairs, like identical pairs. Women usually wear them like one in front, one in back. And they have like a thing that goes over here. They usually have like a tattooed line down here and a nose ring. And they look very distinct. You know, I see Kuna people all over Panama, and they're, and I grew up with molas on our walls, and they're basically the single most influential art form of my life. And so this one is spread across my bed. I look at this when I wake up in the morning. And you can see it's really beautiful. I mean, I don't know what these figures are. There's a baby between them. There's like a circle in there between them. And a lot of times they're abstract plant figures or abstract animal figures, or they incorporate like all parts of the world. You see one like of John F. Kennedy or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or you know, whatever. And this is like a more traditional abstract mola. We have a lot of molas at the walls. I talk about molas in my stage vision piece. This is one of my drawings. This is a different period, so I was using black ink at this period. This is called Nina Kachukma. My grandfather was from Mississippi, Philadelphia, Mississippi. Word is he was part Choctaw, and that's Choctaw. So that means a good night. Not good night like the greeting, but a good night. And then I have these things about Panama. Does anybody want to try? Does anybody have a question or anything? Should we just keep going, or?
Maybe do you want me to try to find that?
Want to?
Maybe
Yeah.
that could be a nice way to sort of draw a conclusion and then.
Yeah, I have a lot more. And I wanted to say too, I try to associate the Isthmus of Madison with the Isthmus of Panama to try to find some semblance of home here. So. You just go to YouTube. I can find it.
mind watching that. Clearly the connection between the drawings that you do, the quilt, like, I'm forgetting the name.
Molas.
The
Yeah.
mola that you showed us, the first one especially,
Mhm.
and then watching this. Have you ever done, are you interested in collaboration as a writer? And in, you know, because there's something about that way of interaction that's going on there that
Yeah.
seems really interesting to you, and I wonder if that, where you find that in your own
Yeah,
work,
I haven't.
if you do.
I haven't been able to successfully collaborate with others.
Uh-huh.
It just hasn't happened.
Uh-huh.
I've had some opportunities, but it's never.
Uh-huh. What about, is reading a place where you feel like that face-to-faceness that you're talking about?
Reading?
Like giving a reading like this to people, that sense of, I'm just curious, you know, because I think you're right, that that's like an interesting thing in relation to writing.
Yeah, I think it's more something that comes up in what I'm trying to do when I'm trying to make something, either a drawing or a poem.
It's like in relation
To
to
me, it has like
poem.
philosophical and spiritual implications.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
Franklin's always telling me that I have to learn to do that, but
You should.
but I really feel that I think it's a really deep practice. I feel like in order for really to really do it, I have to be in Panama
Right.
and learn from people that really know how to do it.
Right.
You know, and I'm not going to try to. So here, I feel like I'm just trying to extrapolate a certain kind of, because this guy Fritjof Schwann, who's a metaphysical philosopher, like a perennial philosopher,
Mhm.
he used to be able to go into apparently go into museums and look at people's outfits and like determine like all kinds of things about the culture just because of the patterns and things. And so that's kind of like what I'm trying to do with Saloma. This is from my country, and you know, this is like a gradual, long-term process. You know, trying to come up with something that, you know, that I can, you know, learn from and somehow embody in my work in some other way.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing all this with us. It's been really
Yeah.
beautiful and fascinating. So thank you.